there is such a thing called timeout. And the way sports teams use timeout seems to be really different than the way we use that concept in our homes. Now, in our homes, that's mostly been used as a child discipline guidance kind of technique, timeout. What I want to recommend is that we take a closer look at the way athletes and sports teams use timeout and maybe do it more like that in our homes. I think it's a lot more productive, because what I see at home is that timeout actually becomes a punishment. It creates isolation, and like I said, mostly we see that in working with children, but people are starting to use that term more and more and applying it to different parts of their lives. Husband and wives need time out from each other, and so they go their separate ways, and they be alone. Time out is alone time. I see a real danger in applying the concept of timeout that way, that it creates a pattern of separation and a pattern of isolation. And just isolation just all around is destructive to our emotional and spiritual well-being. So think about in sports, when someone calls a timeout, people don't run off their separate ways and they go be alone. Timeout is a time to come together. It's to reconnect. It's to remember the plan and to make adjustments to that plan if necessary to get the results that we're looking for. So I think we can do that at home in our relationships. When we call a timeout, yes, something needs to stop. Timeout, this has got to stop, but don't go your separate ways. It's a time to connect, come together, get realigned, refocused, remember the plan, remember your strengths, make adjustments if necessary. That's how we can, using a timeout more the way that the sports team would use timeout, is a lot more productive. Now, I know there are still times when the emotional state that you are in because of what needs to be stopped, timeout, the last thing you want to do is connect with your spouse in that moment. And so there is a place where you need to be alone, but just understand that it needs to be part of the overall plan, not the ultimate end in itself. Because if that becomes the solution to time out, get away from each other, that just creates a really destructive pattern. But if you need that little bit of alone time so that you can have that introspection and inner reflection to help calm things down, because when you're in a state mentally, emotionally of high negative emotion, that actually puts your thinking brain to sleep. And so to have some alone time if it's needed, to bring your thinking brain back online, so then you can actually have a more positive connecting experience in your timeout. You huddle up. So if alone time is needed as part of your timeout process, that's okay, as long as it's a part of the plan, a part of the process to then come back together to have a more positive connection. Think about how that works in your life. Are you using timeout effectively? If you're using it more the old way instead of the sports way, I just encourage you to think about and pattern maybe how you use timeout more like a sports team would. And if you're not using that at all, it really can be a good thing. You can identify those moments when things aren't going right in your relationship, an argument is starting up, whatever it is, something just, you know what that feels like. Time out and connect. Just take a time out and drop everything, just reconnect and say, okay, remember why we're here. What brought us together? What are our strengths? What is our game plan? And do we need to make some adjustments to make that work and succeed and just win? So use a timeout effectively and go, fight, win. You got this.